Welcome back to Froggy French, where real-life drama unfolds through the most compelling stories from the internet. Today, we are diving into 7 incredible tales that will make you question everything from roommate trust to family secrets. These stories range from shocking betrayals to satisfying revenge, each one more surprising than the last. Make sure to subscribe for more captivating content, and let us know in the comments where you are listening from right now. My roommate has been using my bedroom for his Tinder dates, so this is probably going to sound crazy, but I need to get this off my chest. I live with my childhood friend Marcus in a 2-bedroom apartment near campus. We have been roommates for about 8 months now, and everything was going fine until recently. About 3 weeks ago, I started noticing weird things in my room. My bed would be unmade, even though I always make it before leaving for classes. There was this perfume smell that definitely was not mine. And sometimes I would find long blonde hairs on my pillow. At first I thought maybe I was just being paranoid or forgetting things because of stress from midterms. Then last Tuesday I came home early because my afternoon lecture got canceled. I heard voices coming from my room, which was weird because Marcus was supposed to be at work until 6. I quietly opened my door, and there he was with some girl I had never seen before. They were both on my bed, and it was pretty obvious what had been going on. I just stood there for like 10 seconds, not knowing what to say. The girl grabbed her clothes and ran out past me looking super embarrassed. Marcus started explaining how his room was messy and mine was cleaner, so he thought it would be better to bring dates there. He said he figured I would not mind since I was usually at school during the day anyway. I was pretty angry, but maybe I did not handle it the best way. I told him he needed to ask me before using my space, and that it was really inappropriate. He said I was overreacting, and that it was not a big deal since I was not even home. We got into this argument where he kept saying I was being unreasonable. The thing is, he has been my friend since we were kids, so I do not want to completely ruin our friendship over this. But I also feel really violated that he was bringing random people into my private space without permission. I've been sleeping on the couch for the past few days because I keep thinking about strangers being in my bed. I talked to my girlfriend about it, and she thinks I should find a new roommate immediately. My other friends are split. Some think Marcus crossed a line, and others think I am making too big a deal out of it. Maybe I am overreacting, but I just feel like my privacy was completely disrespected. Should I try to work things out with Marcus, or start looking for a new living situation? Wow, this is definitely not okay. Using someone else's bedroom without permission is such a violation of personal space and trust. The fact that Marcus thinks this is no big deal makes it even worse. I mean, these are strangers sleeping in your bed where you are supposed to feel safe and comfortable. I totally get why you feel violated. That is such a normal reaction to have. The whole excuse about his room being messy is just ridiculous. He could have cleaned his own space instead of taking over yours. I think your girlfriend might be right about finding a new roommate, because this shows a serious lack of respect and boundaries. Hopefully the next story has some people with better common sense. I found old letters that revealed a family secret from 40 years ago. My grandmother Helen passed away last month at 84, and we have been going through her belongings. She lived in the same house for over 50 years, so there was a lot to sort through. Yesterday, I was cleaning out her bedroom closet when I found this wooden box hidden behind some old coats. Inside were maybe 20 or 30 letters tied with a blue ribbon. They were all addressed to my grandmother, but from someone named Robert, who I had never heard of before. The letters were dated from 1982 to 1996, so they spanned like 14 years. At first I thought they might just be from an old friend, but as I started reading them, it became clear they were love letters. The really shocking part is that my grandfather died in 1979, so these letters were written years after he passed away. In the letters, Robert talks about how much he misses spending time with my grandmother and mentions things like bringing her flowers and taking drives together. Some of the later letters mention how they wish they could be more open about their relationship. But here's the part that really threw me for a loop. In one letter from 1988, Robert writes about how my Uncle David reminds him more and more of himself as he gets older. My uncle was born in 1963, which was when my grandfather was still alive. But this letter made it sound like Robert might actually be his father. I did some math and realized that my grandmother would have been seeing Robert around the time my uncle was conceived. Robert mentions in another letter how my uncle has his eyes and his stubborn personality. There are also references to keeping secrets and how difficult it has been to watch David grow up from a distance. I have not told anyone in my family about these letters yet because I am not sure what to do. My Uncle David is in his late 50s now and has always said he felt different from his siblings. He looks different from my other uncles too, now that I think about it. But maybe I am reading too much into these letters. Maybe Robert was just a close friend who happened to care about our family. My mom and my other uncles would probably be really upset if they found out about this. My grandmother always had this reputation as the perfect wife and mother, so this would definitely change how people remember her. But maybe my Uncle David has a right to know the truth about his parentage, especially if Robert might still have living relatives. I keep going back and forth about whether I should show these letters to anyone or just put them back where I found them. Part of me thinks some secrets are meant to stay, buried, but another part thinks the truth is important, no matter how uncomfortable. It makes people, what would you do if you found something like this in a deceased relative's belongings? This is such a difficult situation to be in. Finding out family secrets after someone passes away puts you in this impossible position where you cannot even talk to the person who could explain everything. I feel for you because you are basically stuck deciding what to do with information that could change your whole family dynamic. The fact that your uncle always felt different makes me think there might be some truth to what those letters suggest. But then again, maybe your grandmother just had a close friendship with Robert, and you are reading romantic feelings into something that was innocent. Either way, this is the kind of secret that once it comes out, you cannot put it back. Let us see if the next story has any easier family drama to deal with. My upstairs neighbor has been secretly filming our apartment building. I moved into this 4-story apartment building about 7 months ago, and for the most part, it has been pretty quiet. There are maybe 12 units total, and most of the tenants are either students or young professionals. My upstairs neighbor Jerry seemed normal enough when I first met him. Maybe in his early 40s, lives alone, works some kind of office job. But over the past couple months, I started noticing that Jerry knows way too much about everyone's schedules and personal business. Like, he would make comments about how the couple in apartment 3 argues a lot or mention that the old lady on the second floor has been getting a lot of visitors lately. At first I thought maybe he was just observant, or maybe the walls were thin. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I was coming home from work around 7 in the evening, and I saw this weird reflection coming from Jerry's window. I looked up and it seemed like there was some kind of device pointed toward the courtyard. The next day I borrowed binoculars from my friend and took a closer look from across the street. Sure enough, Jerry has set up what looks like small cameras aimed at different parts of the building. One is pointed at the main entrance, another toward the mailboxes, and there might be others I could not see clearly. I also noticed he spends a lot of time sitting by his window with what looks like a notebook. I called the police, but they said unless I had concrete proof of him recording people, they could not do much about it. They suggested I try talking to the building manager first. When I approached our manager, Mrs. Chen, about it, she seemed skeptical and said Jerry had never caused any problems before. So I decided to start documenting what I was seeing. For about 10 days, I took pictures whenever I could see Jerry at his window with his cameras or notebook. I also started paying attention to his behavior and realized he always seems to be watching when people come and go. The thing that really bothers me is that some of these cameras might be able to see into people's apartments depending on the angle. My living room window faces the courtyard, so I have been keeping my curtains closed just in case. It is making me feel paranoid in my own home. I am thinking about showing my evidence to other tenants to see if they have noticed anything weird too. Maybe if more people complain, then Mrs. Chen will take it seriously. But I am also worried that if Jerry finds out I have been watching him, then things might escalate in a bad way. I talked to my sister about it, and she thinks I should just move to a different building rather than cause drama. But I like my apartment, and I should not have to leave because someone else is being creepy. Maybe I am overthinking this whole situation, but it just feels really invasive. Has anyone else dealt with a neighbor who seemed to be spying on the building? This sounds super creepy and invasive. The fact that Jerry knows so much about everyone's personal business is definitely a red flag. And those cameras you saw are really concerning. I do not think you are overthinking this at all. Everyone deserves to feel safe and private in their own home. It is frustrating that the police and building manager are not taking it seriously. But getting other tenants involved seems like a smart approach. If multiple people start complaining, then it becomes harder to ignore. I would definitely keep documenting everything you can see because that evidence might come in handy later. Moving should not be your only option when you are not the one doing anything wrong. Hopefully, the next story involves neighbors who actually respect boundaries. I discovered my boyfriend was using my photos to catfish other women. This is probably the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me, but I need to share it somewhere. I have been dating Connor for about 6 months, and overall, things have been going pretty well. He is 25. I am 23. We met through mutual friends at a party last fall. The only thing that sometimes bothered me was how much Connor seemed to know about my social media posts. Like, he would reference photos I had posted on Instagram before I even told him about them. He would also ask to see pictures I had taken before I posted them anywhere, which I thought was sweet at the time. Last week, my coworker Ashley came up to me during lunch, looking really confused. She said she had been talking to this guy on a dating app who was using my photos as his profile pictures. At first, I thought it was just some random person who had stolen my photos from Instagram, but then Ashley showed me the conversation. The person was messaging exactly like Connor does, using the same phrases and expressions he always uses. Even weirder, they were using photos of me that I had never posted publicly. Pictures I had only sent to Connor or shown him on my phone. I felt sick to my stomach, but I wanted to be absolutely sure before I accused him of anything. So I created a fake profile on the same dating app and started swiping until I found the account Ashley was talking about. It was definitely my photos, but the profile said the name was Emma and claimed to be single and looking for something casual. I decided to message the account from my fake profile to see what would happen. Within a few minutes, I got a response that sounded exactly like Connor's texting style. The person even made this joke that Connor always makes about pineapple on pizza. There was no doubt in my mind that it was him. When I confronted Connor about it later that evening, he tried to deny it at first. But when I showed him screenshots from the fake conversation, he finally admitted what he had been doing. He said he was using my photos because women respond better to attractive female profiles initially. Then he would reveal his real identity after chatting for a while. He claimed that most of the women he matched with were fine with it once he explained and showed them his real photos. He said it was just a way to get more matches and that he never actually met up with anyone while pretending to be me. But that just made me feel even more violated. Knowing he was impersonating me to talk to other women, I broke up with him immediately. But now I am worried about what? Other photos or personal information he might have shared without my permission. I changed all my social media privacy settings and warned my friends to be careful about what they post with me tagged. Am I wrong to feel so betrayed by this? Or should I have tried to work through it with him? This is absolutely a huge betrayal, and you have every right to feel violated. Using your photos to catfish other women is not only dishonest to them, but it is such a massive violation of your privacy and trust. The fact that Connor thought this was acceptable behavior and tried to justify it makes it even worse. I cannot imagine how uncomfortable it must feel, knowing that strangers were having conversations thinking they were talking to you. You definitely made the right choice breaking up with him because this shows such a lack of respect for you as a person. The whole excuse about women responding better to female profiles is just ridiculous. If he was having trouble getting matches, then he should have worked on improving his own profile instead of stealing your identity. Time to move on to a story about people with better moral compasses, hopefully. I got scammed buying a phone online, but managed to get revenge. About 4 months ago, I was looking to buy a used iPhone because mine had completely died, and I could not afford a brand new one. I found this listing on a local marketplace app for an iPhone 12 in good condition for $250, which seemed like a reasonable price. The seller went by the name Mike and had decent ratings from previous sales. We exchanged messages for a few days, and he seemed legitimate. Sent me additional photos when I asked and answered all my questions about the phone's condition. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown on a Saturday afternoon. When I got there, Mike was waiting with the phone, and it looked exactly like the photos he had sent. He let me hold it and test a few things. The screen worked fine, and it seemed to turn on and off normally. I paid him the $250 in cash, and he left right after the transaction. But when I got home and tried to set up the phone properly, it started acting weird. After about an hour, it completely shut down and would not turn back on no matter what I tried. I took it to a repair shop the next day, and they told me it was basically a fake shell with some working parts on the outside, but nothing functional inside. I tried contacting Mike through the Marketplace app, but he had already deleted his account. I reported the scam to the platform and to local police, but they said there was not much they could do without more. information about the seller's real identity. I was pretty frustrated about losing the money, but I also felt stupid for falling for such an obvious scam. I decided to just move on and save up for a legitimate phone from an actual store. But then, about 2 months later, I saw another listing that looked familiar. It was a different account name, but the photos and description were almost identical to the fake phone Mike had sold me. The same coffee table background, same angles, even the same small scratch on the corner that I remembered from the original listing. I was pretty sure it was the same scammer using a new account. This time I decided to mess with him a little bit. I created a fake buyer account and started negotiating to buy the phone. I asked tons of detailed questions, requested multiple photo angles, and generally wasted as much of his time as possible over the course of 2 weeks. Finally, I agreed to meet him at the same coffee shop where he had scammed me originally. But instead of showing up, I sent him messages every few minutes with excuses about being late. I kept him waiting there for over 2 hours before finally telling him I had changed my mind about buying the phone. Maybe it was petty, but it felt good to waste his time the same way he had wasted my money. I reported the new account to the platform with evidence that it was connected to the previous scam. I do not know if anything came of it, but at least I felt like I had gotten some small measure of revenge. Was I wrong to lead him on like that? Or did he deserve it for scamming people? I completely understand wanting to get back at someone who scammed you, and honestly, this guy had it coming. Getting scammed is so frustrating, especially when you are already tight on money and trying to find a good deal. The fact that he was still out there doing the same thing to other people makes your revenge feel even more justified. Wasting a scammer's time might actually prevent them from scamming other innocent people during those hours, so you probably did a public service. I do not think what you did was wrong at all. He made the choice to be dishonest and deal with the consequences. Let us see if the next story has someone who gets what they deserve too. My parents have been lying about being broke while I send them money. I need some perspective on this situation because I am starting to question everything about my relationship with my parents. I am 26 years old and have been working as a software developer for the past 3 years, making about $65,000 per year ever since I got my first real job. My parents have been asking me for financial help pretty regularly. They always made it sound like they were struggling to pay basic bills and might lose the house or have utilities shut off. Usually it was requests for $300 or $400 at a time to cover rent or electricity or car repairs. I felt bad for them because I grew up watching them struggle financially and I wanted to help now that I was finally making decent money. Over the past 2.5 years, I have probably sent them close to $12,000 total. Sometimes I had to put their emergencies on my credit cards when I did not have cash available. Last month, my mom asked me to drive her to a doctor's appointment because her car was supposedly in the shop again. While we were sitting in the waiting room, her bank called about some investment account that was maturing. The person on the phone mentioned something about $60,000 and asked if she wanted to roll it into a new certificate. My mom looked really uncomfortable and tried to end the call quickly. When I asked her about it, she said it was probably a mistake, or maybe they called the wrong person. But I could not stop thinking about it because $60,000 is not the kind of number you just make up randomly. That weekend when they were both out of the house, I went through some papers in their home office. I know it was wrong to snoop, but I needed to understand what was going on. I found bank statements showing multiple savings accounts, some kind of retirement fund, and that certificate of deposit the bank had called about. According to the statements, they have at least $90,000 saved up across different accounts. Even worse, I could see deposits that matched exactly with the amounts I had been sending them. They were not using my money for emergencies. They were just adding it to their savings. When I confronted them about it, they first tried to deny everything and then said they were saving money to leave me and my sister as an inheritance. They claimed they wanted to see if I would help them out of love rather than obligation. My dad actually said he was proud of me for being so generous. I told them I wanted the money back since they clearly did not need it for emergencies like they had claimed. They refused and said the money was already invested for my future benefit anyway. They acted like I was being ungrateful and selfish for asking for it back. I stopped sending them money and have barely spoken to them in the past month. My sister thinks I am overreacting and that I should appreciate that they were trying to build something to leave us. But I feel like they manipulated me and took advantage of my guilt about their past financial struggles. Am I wrong to be angry about this? Or should I just be happy they were saving money for the family? This is such a betrayal of trust, and I completely understand why you are angry. Your parents essentially ran a long-term guilt trip to manipulate you into giving them money they did not actually need. The fact that they framed it as testing your love and generosity makes it even more manipulative. You were trying to help them with what you thought were genuine emergencies, and they were just pocketing the cash for their own savings goals. $12,000 is a lot of money that you could have been saving for your own future instead of subsidizing their already healthy bank accounts. The inheritance excuse is ridiculous too, because that money was yours to begin with. I think you have every right to be upset and to stop giving them money until they can be honest about their actual financial situation. Hopefully, our next story features some parents with better ethics. I exposed a professor who was trading grades for sexual favors. This story happened at my university last semester, and I am still processing everything that went down. I am a senior studying business administration at a mid-sized state school. One of my required courses was taught by Professor Williams, who had been there for maybe 15 years and was in his early 50s. From the beginning of the semester, there were weird rumors about Professor Williams and how certain female students seemed to get better treatment in his classes. Nothing concrete, just whispers about how some girls who did not seem to be the strongest students were getting surprisingly high grades on major assignments. My girlfriend Rachel was also taking his class, and she started struggling with her grades around midterm despite putting in more effort than usual. She is normally a solid B+ student, but was getting C- and D+ marks on papers that she had worked really hard on. About 3 weeks before finals, Professor Williams asked Rachel to stay after class to discuss her performance. She came home that evening really upset and told me what had happened. He had basically implied that her grades could improve if she was willing to be more collaborative outside of normal class time. Rachel was not sure if she was reading too much into his comments, but the way he phrased things made it sound like he was suggesting something inappropriate. She felt uncomfortable, but also worried about failing the class since she needed it to graduate on time. I convinced Rachel to go to the dean's office to report what had happened, but they said they needed more concrete evidence before they could take action. They suggested she try recording any future conversations if Professor Williams made similar comments again. Rachel agreed to meet with him one more time, wearing a small recording device I had borrowed from a friend who does video production. The conversation lasted about 25 minutes, and Professor Williams was much more explicit the second time. He directly mentioned that certain students had found ways to improve their grades through private meetings and suggested Rachel consider similar arrangements. We took the recording to the dean, but also decided to contact the campus newspaper, since we were not sure the administration would handle it properly. Within a week, 3 other female students came forward with similar stories about Professor Williams making inappropriate offers. The whole thing blew up pretty quickly after that. Professor Williams was suspended pending investigation and eventually fired. There were articles in the local paper, and the story got shared on social media by current and former students. Some people criticized us for going to the media instead of letting the university handle it internally. A few professors made comments about how we had damaged the reputation of the entire department. But I think more students needed to know what was happening so they could come forward if they had similar experiences. The investigation found evidence that this had been going on for several years with multiple students. Professor Williams is now facing criminal charges, and the university has implemented new policies for reporting inappropriate conduct. Do you think we handled this the right way, or should we have tried to work through official channels first? You absolutely did the right thing, and I am glad you both had the courage to expose this. Professor Williams was clearly abusing his position of power and taking advantage of vulnerable students who needed good grades to graduate. The fact that this had been going on for years makes it even more important that you spoke up when you did. Going to the media was smart, because universities sometimes try to handle these situations quietly to protect their reputation instead of protecting students. You probably saved other students from going through the same awful experience Rachel had to deal with. The professors who criticized you for damaging the department's reputation have their priorities completely backwards. They should be thanking you for getting rid of someone who was harming students. Well, that wraps up our 7 stories for today. Quite a range of human drama and moral dilemmas to think about. Thank you so much for sticking around until the very end of these wild stories. I would love to hear your thoughts on which story shocked you the most, or if you have experienced anything similar in your own life. Remember to check out the Google form link in the description below, where you can submit your own real-life stories for a chance to be featured. All submissions will be read completely anonymously in upcoming videos, so do not hesitate to share your most dramatic experiences. Please hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this content and want to see more stories like these. Good night, everyone, and see you in the next video.